Look around you for a moment. Really look. Most men you see aren't weak by nature. They're unfinished by design. They were raised to function, not to command. Trained to be dependable, agreeable, useful. The man who answers the call. The man who fixes what breaks. The man who carries everyone else's weight and wonders why his own life never moves forward. Your father likely taught you to work hard, to be honest, to respect others. Those lessons are clean, noble, necessary for survival. But survival is not power. Survival is breathing. Power is direction. Ask yourself something uncomfortable. Did anyone ever teach you how to walk into a room and shift the air without speaking? How silence can weigh more than words? How being constantly available slowly erodes respect? How emotional control separates rulers from those who are ruled? Most men never learn this because their fathers never learned it. They inherited obedience, not authority. Endurance, not leverage. What was passed down wasn't wisdom for dominance. It was a manual for fitting in. Here is the truth most people never say out loud. The world does not reward softness. It never has. It rewards clarity, discipline, and the man who cannot be easily moved, guilted, or used. This isn't an attack on your past. It's an invitation to end a cycle, not by blaming where you came from, but by refusing to stay there. What follows isn't comfort. It's orientation. A map out of illusion and into reality. You grew up inside a carefully protected story. Be good. Work hard. Play fair. Trust people. Avoid conflict. If you do the right thing long enough, the world will eventually notice. As a child, that story made sense. Adults looked certain. Authority looked stable. You had no reason to doubt the blueprint handed to you, but then you stepped into real life and felt the impact. Hard. You discovered that intentions don't matter. Effort doesn't guarantee reward. Honesty doesn't protect you from betrayal. You watched liars rise while you stayed still. You watched connections outperform competence. You watched loyalty get exploited and kindness mistaken for weakness. It felt like the rules changed overnight. But the truth is darker. The rules were never what you were told. You were trained for obedience in a world that runs on advantage. Think of it like this. Childhood gave you a map of a garden. Adult life dropped you into a jungle. You kept following garden rules and couldn't understand why you kept getting cut. You weren't prepared for cruelty because you were shielded from it. Protected environments feel safe, but safety without exposure creates fragility. A cage lined with comfort is still a cage. When you finally step out, you don't become free. You become confused. Here's the line you need to burn into your thinking. Society rewards power, not purity. Discipline, not naivety. Strength, not softness. The man who understands this doesn't complain about fairness. He doesn't beg the world to be different. He studies the terrain and adapts. He stops asking how things should be and starts mastering how they are. Manhood begins the moment you stop expecting people to share your moral code. When you stop being shocked by behavior you were warned about but never taught to prepare for. Seeing reality clearly is not cynicism. It's vision. And vision is the first form of power. The boy clings to how things should be. The man operates on how they are. If you were raised blind to this, it wasn't your fault. But staying blind is a choice. Every day you continue to operate on childhood programming in an adult arena. You pay a tax. In your relationships, your career, your self-respect, your potential. You lose ground not because you lack goodness, but because you lack strategy. A sword without a hilt cuts the hand that holds it. Now look at how people experience you. Not how you intend to be seen, but how you are used. Are you respected or relied upon? admired, or accessed. There is a critical difference. Useful men are called when something breaks. Powerful men are called when decisions must be made. Useful men are praised for effort. Powerful men are deferred to because their presence carries consequence. Usefulness feels virtuous. Society applauds it. Parents encourage it. But usefulness without boundaries turns a man into a tool. Predictable, expected, taken for granted. The moment you become indispensable to other people's comfort, you become expendable to your own future. You bend your schedule, you answer quickly, you show up endlessly and slowly without realizing it. You teach the world that your time has no weight. Think of yourself like water. Poured freely, it's spilled and wasted. Contained, it becomes pressure. Pressure builds force. Force changes terrain. Power is not loud. It's concentrated. The men who shape outcomes are not always the most helpful. They are the most deliberate. This isn't a call to become cruel. It's a call to stop being careless with yourself. To understand that generosity without structure is self-erasure. That reliability without respect is servitude dressed as virtue. You don't become powerful by serving endlessly. You become powerful by building value that others must earn access to. So before you move forward, anchor this in your mind. The world doesn't belong to the innocent. It belongs to the aware. Awareness is the first gate. Step through it. In the next part, we'll dismantle the most dangerous trap men fall into after this realization. The illusion that being needed is the same as being respected. Once you finally see reality clearly, there's a new trap waiting for you. It's quieter, more seductive, and it ruins just as many men as naivety does. It's the belief that being needed equals being valued. That's the disease society hands to good men. It teaches you to mistake dependency for respect. It convinces you that if people call you often, if they rely on you, if you're always the one who comes through, then you must matter. But need is not admiration. Need is often just convenience wearing a friendly face. Here's the question you have to answer with brutal honesty. When people think of you, do they picture a man with gravity or a man with utility? A respected man doesn't have to announce his standards. People feel them. A useful man doesn't have standards. He has availability. He is the emergency contact for everyone else's life. He's the guy who says, "No problem," even when it is a problem. He's the guy who rearranges his day to rescue people who wouldn't walk across the street for him. And because he keeps doing it, they don't hate him. They don't even think they're doing anything wrong. They simply learn the price of access to him is cheap, so they keep buying. This is where the essence of power begins. Not in your ability to help, but in your ability to withhold. Not to punish, not to manipulate, but to protect your value. Think about the reliable guy archetype. Society loves him. He's praised as mature, responsible, considerate. His father might have told him, "Be dependable, be the man people can count on." And yes, dependability matters. But if your dependability has no boundaries, you don't become a leader. You become infrastructure, useful, invisible, taken for granted until it breaks. It's like streetlights. Nobody praises a streetlight. Nobody respects a streetlight. They only notice it when it stops working. That's what happens when you train people to access you without earning you. You become background support. Now let's slice deeper. Why do men fall into this role? Because being useful gives you a hit of identity. It feels like purpose. It feels like belonging. It makes you feel safe. When people need you, you feel needed. And when you feel needed, you feel less afraid of being abandoned. So you keep saying yes. Not because you're kind, but because you're scared of being irrelevant, and the world can smell that. This is the hidden law. The more you need to be needed, the more you will be used. Powerful men understand this instinctively. They don't build their identity on service. They build it on direction. Useful men fix problems. Powerful men create systems. Useful men are praised for effort. Powerful men are respected for outcome. Useful men chase harmony. Powerful men create order. Useful men ask, "How can I help?" Powerful men ask, "What's the exchange?" That question isn't selfish. It's reality. Because any dynamic with no exchange becomes exploitation. And exploitation doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with permission. Every time you overgive, you are teaching people how to treat you. Every time you say yes when your body wants to say no, you sign a contract in blood. My needs come last. And then you act shocked when everyone agrees. Think about your life right now. There are people who only show up when they want something. They don't check on your mind. They check on your availability. They don't care about your growth. They care about your access. And here's the terrifying part. They will call you a good man while draining you. Because good man is often the label people use for someone they can safely extract from. So, you have to become ruthless in one specific way. Ruthless with access. Not with compassion, not with empathy, with access. Machiavelli understood that the worst position is being indispensable to someone else's comfort. Because once you become predictable, you become controllable. Once you become controllable, you become replaceable. And the world will replace you the moment you stop providing what you trained them to expect. That's why the first real test of power isn't a fight. It's a boundary. Because the moment you stop being convenient, you see the truth. The gratitude vanishes. The warmth cools. The love becomes irritation. People don't get mad when you change because you became worse. They get mad because you became harder to use. So here's the move. You stop being the tool in someone else's hand. You become the architect of your own empire. How? You introduce scarcity. You start to treat your presence like a currency, not a donation. You don't rush to reply. You don't rush to fix. You don't rush to rescue. You don't rush to explain. You let people sit with their own weight sometimes. Not because you're cold, but because you're not their servant. This isn't about becoming arrogant. It's about becoming expensive. Because the man who is cheap is always purchased. The man who is expensive is considered. Now we enter the psychological core. Scarcity creates value. This is not philosophy. This is human wiring. The rare thing is prized. The abundant thing is dismissed. Gold is not valuable because it shines. It's valuable because it's hard to get. The same is true for you. Your attention, your time, your emotional bandwidth, your presence in someone's world. When you hand it out like it's unlimited, people treat it like it's worthless. And this is where most men get it backwards. They think instant replies show loyalty. They think always being available shows love. They think always showing up proves character. No, it proves you have no perimeter. It proves anyone can reach you, and anything that can be reached at any moment loses its mystique. It loses its gravity. It loses its power. So let me give you a simple test. The last time someone messaged you, how fast did you respond? If you respond instantly to everything, you're building a reputation as always on. And always on is not leadership energy. It is service energy. You don't have to play games. You don't have to ghost people. You don't have to act fake. You simply have to become disciplined. You guard your time like a king guards his treasury. Because every minute you spend is a minute you'll never get back. And every minute you spend reacting to other people's needs is a minute you are not building your own life. This is the metaphor. Your life is a fortress. Useful men leave the gates open to prove they're friendly. Powerful men guard the gates to prove they have standards. A fortress with open gates is not welcoming. It's vulnerable. So you begin to close the gate. You pause before answering. You stop dropping everything. You stop letting urgency from others become your emergency. You say no without a lecture. You stop explaining your boundaries like you're asking permission to have them. And yes, some people will not like it, but that's the point. You are not building a life that depends on being liked. You are building a life that depends on self-respect. Because self-respect is the foundation of every other form of power. And here's what happens when you do this. People start treating you differently. Not because you demanded it, because your behavior trained them to. Your absence creates impact. Your presence becomes an event. Your time becomes something they have to earn. And the ones who truly value you won't leave. They'll adjust. They'll respect it. They'll rise to meet your standards. The ones who are only using you, they'll fall away. And that's not a loss. That's purification. Now we enter the territory where most men collapse without ever realizing what killed them. Emotions. Not because emotions are bad, but because uncontrolled emotion is an open door. And open doors invite intruders. You were taught something dangerous growing up. You were told that expressing your feelings is strength, that letting it all out is healthy, that reacting honestly makes you authentic. And in private spaces, with trusted people, that can be true. But life is not therapy. Life is an arena. And in arenas, emotions are information. And information is leverage. Every emotional reaction you display teaches people exactly where you are vulnerable. Think back carefully. The last time someone made you angry, jealous, insecure, guilty, or defensive, what happened? You reacted. Your tone changed. Your posture shifted. Your words lost precision. In that moment, you were no longer leading the interaction. You were being led. Because the second someone can trigger you, they can control you. This is the essence of emotional power, not the absence of feeling, but dominance over the space between stimulus and response. Most men live inside that gap without control. Someone insults them, they fire back. Someone withholds attention, they chase. Someone pushes guilt, they fold. Someone offers praise, they attach, like puppets responding to pressure points. And manipulators know this. They don't need to overpower you physically. They just need to push the right emotional button and wait. Anger makes you reckless. Fear makes you compliant. Pride makes you blind. Guilt makes you obedient. Desire makes you stupid. A man ruled by emotion is predictable, and a predictable man is easy to defeat. Cold control does not mean cruelty. It does not mean numbness. It means clarity. It means you still feel everything, but you don't bleed in public. You don't hand your inner state to people who haven't earned it. Imagine your emotions like fire. Uncontained fire burns the house down. Contained fire powers the engine. Powerful men build furnaces. Weak men let sparks fly everywhere. The key is the pause. That pause between what happens and how you respond. That pause is where power lives. When someone insults you and you pause, they lose momentum. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't bite, they feel exposed. When someone guilts you and you sit in silence, the manipulation collapses. In that pause, you reclaim authorship of the moment. This is why the calm man in a chaotic room always ends up in control. While others are reacting, he's observing. While others are talking, he's calculating. While others are emotional, he's positioning. Emotionally reactive men fight battles they shouldn't be in. Strategic men choose where to fight and when. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. He knew that a ruler driven by emotion would self-destruct. Anger leads to mistakes. Fear invites domination. Love, when uncontrolled, dissolves judgment. This doesn't mean you suppress emotion. Suppression creates cracks. Cracks eventually explode. Control is different. Control is awareness. It's noticing the surge of anger and not obeying it. It's feeling attraction and not letting it hijack your standards. It's sensing guilt and questioning whether it's earned or manufactured. Most guilt is not morality. It's social programming. People use guilt to access what they are not entitled to. And if guilt works on you, you will be owned. So you train yourself to sit with discomfort without acting. You let the urge pass. You let the heat cool. You let the noise settle. Because the man who can sit inside emotional discomfort without moving is terrifying to anyone trying to manipulate him. Here's the metaphor. Most men are like open circuits. Touch them, and they spark. Powerful men are insulated. Energy flows only when they choose. This is why silence becomes dangerous. Not the weak silence of avoidance, but the deliberate silence of restraint. When you don't react, people start reacting to themselves. They over-explain. They project. They reveal intention. Silence forces the other person to show their hand, and in that moment, you see who you're dealing with. This is where emotional control merges with psychological dominance. You stop arguing. You stop defending. You stop explaining your position to people who are fishing for reaction, not understanding. You don't win power struggles by proving you're right. You win by refusing to be pulled into them. And this is where many men panic. They feel like if they don't respond, they'll lose ground. If they don't explain, they'll be misunderstood. If they don't react, they'll look weak. The opposite is true. Reaction signals fragility. Restraint signals authority. The man who doesn't rush to defend himself communicates something silently. I don't need your approval to stand where I stand. That energy is felt immediately. It creates hesitation. Hesitation creates respect. Respect creates leverage. Now let's go even deeper. Why do men lose emotional control so easily? Because they are still addicted to approval. Insults hurt more when you care how you're seen. Rejection hurts more when you need validation. Disrespect stings more when your identity depends on being liked. So, emotional mastery is inseparable from autonomy. The less you need external approval, the harder it is to shake you. That's why powerful men look calm under pressure. Not because they don't feel fear, but because fear doesn't decide for them. They've already made peace with standing alone, and that makes them immune to most psychological attacks. Picture a man standing in the center of a storm, wind screaming, debris flying. Everyone else is running. He's still, not frozen, anchored. That anchor is internal authority. You build it by doing one thing consistently, choosing long-term position over short-term emotional relief. You don't clap back. You don't chase closure. You don't seek the last word. You let others burn energy while you conserve yours. Because energy is power, and power must be preserved. When you master this, something shifts. People stop trying to provoke you. They stop testing you. They become more careful with their words, not because you threaten them, but because they don't know how to move you anymore. And what people can't move, they respect or avoid. Both are wins. But this is only half the transformation. Because emotional control prepares you for something even harder, doing what must be done when it's uncomfortable. There is a point on this path where comfort becomes the enemy. Most men never cross it, because crossing it requires something society trained you to fear: disappointing people. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If you never hurt anyone's feelings, you are not living deliberately. You are living reactively. You are arranging your life around other people's emotional comfort instead of your own direction. And that is not kindness. That is self-erasure. Necessary cruelty is not violence. It is not malice. It is not waking up wanting to harm others. Necessary cruelty is the willingness to do what must be done, even when it makes you look cold in someone else's story. Even when it costs approval. Even when it triggers guilt. Most men avoid this their entire lives because they want to be seen as good. They want to be liked. They want to be remembered fondly. So they tolerate disrespect. They stay in draining situations. They keep explaining themselves to people who don't listen. They sacrifice momentum to keep peace. They dim their edge so others don't feel threatened. And they call it maturity. But look closely. That behavior doesn't build strength. It builds resentment. Quiet, poisonous resentment that leaks into every area of life. Necessary cruelty is saying no without defending it. It is walking away without providing closure. It is cutting off access to people who repeatedly drain you. It is choosing your long-term path over someone else's short-term comfort. And yes, people will call you selfish. But here's the rule no one teaches you. The people who get angry when you set boundaries are usually the ones benefiting from you not having any. They weren't attached to you. They were attached to what they could extract from you. So when you stop giving, they don't miss you. They miss the version of you that was easy to use. Think of your life like a ship at sea. For years, you let anyone aboard. Friends, family, strangers. Some helped steer. Many punched holes in the hull. You kept patching the damage, telling yourself loyalty meant endurance. Necessary cruelty is throwing people overboard before the ship sinks. Not out of hatred, out of survival. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that clinging to goodness in every situation destroys men. Not because goodness is weak, but because the world is not always deserving of it. Kindness without strength invites exploitation. Compassion without boundaries is suicide. Sometimes you must be cold to remain intact. Sometimes you must disappoint others to avoid betraying yourself. Sometimes you must accept being misunderstood as the cost of evolution. Powerful men do not apologize for choosing themselves. They understand that no one else will guard their future for them. They do not negotiate their core priorities. They do not sacrifice their vision to preserve comfort. They act decisively. And decisiveness always looks cruel to those who benefited from your hesitation. Here is the metaphor. A surgeon must cut to heal. The cut hurts. The blood alarms. But without the cut, the infection spreads. Necessary cruelty is surgery on your life. It removes what is killing you slowly. And when you finally do it, when you stop over-explaining, stop negotiating your boundaries, stop carrying emotional debt for others, something stabilizes inside you. The noise quiets. The guilt weakens. Your spine strengthens. You realize something liberating. You were never responsible for managing everyone else's feelings. You were responsible for managing your direction. And once that clicks, you stop apologizing for protecting your path. You stop confusing kindness with compliance. You become strong first. And from strength, you can afford generosity. From weakness, generosity only makes you disappear. There is a final separation that decides everything, not between good and bad, not between strong and weak, but between men who need permission and men who move anyway. This is autonomy. Most men never reach it because approval addiction is quieter than fear and harder to kill. They delay decisions waiting for agreement. They soften ambition to avoid judgment. They shrink goals so no one feels threatened. They ask, explain, justify, rehearse, and hesitate until time makes the decision for them. And time is merciless. Autonomy begins the moment you accept a brutal responsibility. No one is coming to validate your life. No applause will arrive before action. No consensus will appear to bless your direction. If you wait for approval, you have already surrendered your authority. Powerful men don't ask, "Is this okay?" They ask, "Is this aligned?" That single shift changes everything. Approval dependence is a prison built from other people's opinions. Opinions of parents carrying outdated fears. Friends projecting their own limits. Society rewarding obedience and punishing deviation. And the most dangerous opinions of all, those of people whose lives you wouldn't trade places with. When you let those voices vote on your path, you are not free. You are governed. Autonomy is choosing to stand alone if necessary, to be misunderstood, to be doubted, to be judged, and still move. That doesn't mean recklessness. It means self-trust. It means you become the final authority in your own life. Here is the metaphor. Most men live like tenants in their own minds. They check with others before rearranging furniture. They fear upsetting the landlord. Autonomous men own the building. They renovate when needed. They tear down walls. They accept the noise of construction as the price of expansion. And this naturally leads to solitude. Solitude terrifies men who still need validation. Silence forces confrontation with the self. No mirrors, no applause, no distraction. Just you and the truth of who you are and who you are not. But solitude is where sovereignty is forged. A man who cannot be alone is easy to control. Threaten his relationships and he folds. Threaten his status and he complies. Threaten isolation and he surrenders his principles. But a man who has learned to stand alone, who has faced himself without noise, without approval, without performance, becomes untouchable. Because what leverage remains? Rejection means nothing to him. Disapproval has no teeth. Isolation is familiar ground. Solitude is not loneliness, Loneliness is needing others to feel whole. Solitude is choosing yourself to become whole. In solitude, you strip away borrowed beliefs. You hear your own voice again. You plan without interference. You sharpen without distraction. You rebuild identity deliberately instead of inheriting it unconsciously. And that leads to the final act. Reinvention. The version of you that lived for approval cannot come with you. The version that avoided conflict cannot survive this level. The version that said yes out of fear must die, not gradually, decisively. Every powerful man has buried former versions of himself, the obedient one, the needy one, the emotionally reactive one. They thanked those versions for survival and then replaced them. Reinvention is not pretending. It is adaptation. It is removing identities that no longer serve the terrain you are now standing on. You kill habits before they kill futures. You kill patterns before they imprison potential. You kill weakness before the world does it for you. This is not becoming fake. This is becoming precise. The world will not wait for you to be ready. Life will not pause while you deliberate. Others are moving, adapting, evolving. So the choice is simple. Evolve consciously or be reshaped by force. You are not behind because of your past. You are behind only if you refuse to transform now. Close this chapter of your life with action, not intention. Set one boundary. Make one decision without asking. Say one no without explaining. Begin immediately, because power does not arrive with permission. It arrives the moment you decide to rule your own life. This is where everything becomes real, not in theory, not in words, but in action. You now see the pattern that shaped you and the rules that quietly ruled you. The need for approval, the habit of overgiving, the fear of standing alone. None of that made you weak. It made you trained. And training can be undone. But knowledge without movement is just another form of comfort. So don't close this and return to the same behaviors. That's how men stay trapped. Close this and do one thing differently. Immediately. Say no. Pause instead of reacting. Withhold access. Choose yourself once. That single act breaks momentum. Transformation doesn't come from motivation, it comes from decision. And decisions compound fast. If this unsettled you, good. That's the old identity resisting its own death. Let it go. You don't need permission to change. You don't need agreement to move. You only need resolve. Stand up differently. Move differently. Live deliberately. This is where boys stop surviving, and men begin ruling.